Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Wow, what a good-looking group of people. As a matter of fact, I sound loud, don't I? Yeah, I can tell. Yeah. Welcome to Kentucky Developmental Education Institute. It is my pleasure to welcome you here. I will tell you up front, for those who know me and have heard me speak many times, normally I don't use notes, only because I screw up really bad. But Sue Kane told me I had to stay on script. And if you know Sue, you know I will stay on script, at least as much as I can. It's great having you here. I do want to welcome you here for what we consider to be one of the more important elements of what we're trying to do in the state of Kentucky. We're trying to get more people to the point of not only being academically prepared when they come to college, we want to make sure that when they get there, they move through the system faster and more complete with not only the completion we want them to have, but also the learning we want them to have. So this clearly goes to that. You know, I've been in Kentucky for a long time. I've been other places too, but I've been in Kentucky for a long time. And the topic of developmental education, remedial coursework, all of this has been what I would consider very much the albatross of what they thought Kentucky higher education was. But I've also been doing this long enough to know that the people in this room are the people that have been the most dedicated people I've ever met to make sure that those that are coming to us that were in the most need got the kind of education they most deserved. So I want to thank you personally for being a part of what I consider to be very much the item that we need to be focused on. In a few minutes, you're going to hear a lot of good people talk a lot of stuff all day long about the importance of coming up with at least new, somewhat of an agenda that helps us develop new models or implement some of the models that we know that will work to help our students get through. You know these data already, obviously. If you come to our campuses underprepared academically, you graduate about half the rate of those that are prepared. Now, I've always had an issue even having that conversation because the assumption is that that gap should be determined necessarily by those that are achieving the most. My argument is that the conversation should be about setting goals to help all of our students succeed as much as they possibly can. And in this case, if that was the case, then many of our students who are in academic remedial need are farther away from the goal than we feel very comfortable with. I want to, before we get really started into the conversation, I want to read my notes that Sue gave me to make sure that I do it correctly, Sue, before I go off a little bit. You know, we want to say thank you to all of our public universities, all of our 16 community and technical colleges which are represented here, and we even have UPike here. Am I correct? Yay, way to go, UPike. Tell Hurley I said thanks for being a part of this. Any other private independent colleges or other universities for profit that we're missing? Well, thank you all for being here. I'm also happy to recognize Complete College America, who has really put this agenda, as well as several other agendas on completion, on the front page, and really has helped us to think about this conversation and to really become a very strong, active member. I would have to say that I feel good about Kentucky in the past. I think we've always been there trying to figure out exactly what we need to do to increase the likelihood that our students succeed, especially in this area. But Complete College America has really put this on the nation's map. So thank you, Complete College America. And we have with us Bruce Vandell and Blake Johnson. Bruce is the vice president at Complete College America, and Blake, one of the newest members. He told me earlier he had some big shoes to fill. I told him I had no problem worrying about him filling it because I thought we would even expand it. So we've set a mark for you, brother. He's the director of communications. We also have featured presenters today. Heidi Eastern from Boise State. Where are you, Heidi? Yeah. You know, I know your president very well, as he probably, tell him I said hello, by the way. Loretta Griffey from Austin P. Austin P is doing great things in Tennessee. Who would have ever thought that a little college from Clarksville, Tennessee would be doing what you guys are doing? Way to go, by the way. I'm very happy to see it. My brother lives in Clarksville, so I'll visit him and visit you. One of you have to buy me dinner. I'm not sure which. Casey Sachs from Colorado Community College System. Shauna Van from Front Ridge Community College in Fort Collins, Colorado. Welcome, by the way, to all of you. We also want to make sure that we give special thanks to the campus administrators, advisors, and other student support staff. Fairly often we get lost in the conversation about the role that faculty play in this area. And we do know that, in fact, faculty's input in and out of the classroom with these students will have the greatest effect. But we also know that the student support staff and advisors, as well as other people who make sure that these folk stay on task, play a huge part. So thank you guys for being here also. Our goal for today is to think about some game changers for students on our campuses, particularly those entering, needing, and asking for additional support. Kentucky's work on college readiness in middle school and high school intervention and college advising program for students not on target for readiness for post-secondary courses are nationally recognized models that have positively impacted the readiness of our high school students. And we know what's happening. If you've been reading the paper, we know we've increased when we started this conversation heavily. We started a long time ago, but when the focus, I also see EPSB here, by the way. I thought I did. Anyway, yeah, I do. So welcome, everybody. But, you know, in 2009, when Senate Bill 1 came into effect that called on the Council on Post-Secondary Education and the Kentucky Department of Education and the Educational Professional Standards Board to focus on how do we get more students ready to come into high school, and then what do we do with them and how we do it with them when they get to college, very much caused us to pay special attention. And when they told us at the time they were going to set these standards for us to get to by 2015, I was coming into the council exactly at the time that the bill was coming into effect. We said, wow, that's fairly aggressive, and not sure we're going to be able to accomplish that. I'm happy to say not only are we on target, we've actually at a point of exceeding the target, but we have a lot more to do, because without a doubt, those students that are coming to us now, more are prepared, if you will, academically coming to us, and those that are coming to us that are not academically prepared may be the toughest cookies to deal with. So even though we are getting more prepared students, the students that are underprepared, we're going to have to figure out exactly new ways of thinking about those students. We have made significant progress, but obviously we still have work to do. If you don't believe me, look at the scores that are coming out. Although we are increasing in a lot of areas, including our ACT, which is a readiness benchmark that we tend to think about, we know that we still have significant gaps that are happening with our low income as well as our underrepresented minority groups. This is an area that we're really going to have to pay some attention to. Some of the co-requisite models we'll talk about today, a lot of evidence are coming out that this sort of model that increases the mentoring and the environment of these students in the cohorts, if you, in a cohort model, really increases the likelihood that they're going to succeed. So the argument here is not only will this work for all underprepared students, but even maybe for special groups within those categories. One of the areas that Complete College America has been pushing hard is the accelerated and co-requisite developmental education model. Now, you know a lot about that, and you know that, in fact, we gave a few grants out to do some pilots to see if it's really working for Kentucky. And those grants that we gave out, and I want to make sure that I get this right, Sue, if not, you correct me, okay? that we gave from $7,500 to $20,000 and awarded to 5 universities, EKU, KSU, Moorhead, Murray, WKU, and then 5 community and technical colleges, Gateway, Jefferson, Maysville, Owensboro, and Somerset. Guys, I hope you all produce some good data for us to really look at, because we want to really see and measure as much as we can in a stratified way whether these models truly work for all of our students. Obviously, evidence nationally show that they do. And we're going to be moving into that direction, I think, no matter what. But we want to make sure when we move that we have the kind of path that allows us to look formatively at some of the things that maybe we can tweak in order to make sure that they work. We're also supporting the work on campuses to create a cultural context for the programming. And some of you know, if you're at Kakada, we talked a lot about 15 to Finish. That was the name of it. So all you folk who were involved in that, I appreciate it, because we know that so often much of this, and some of you who are math folk know this very well, it's not that people can't perform math. In many cases, they believe that they can't. Thus, it has an effect. So the fear of not being able to be successful truly has become a cultural milieu. The same with taking 12 hours per semester. Some of us have been around long enough and we're in college where 15, 16 hours was the norm. We had pathways. We had the things that people say, you have to do this every semester. And many of us got through in 4 years just with that mentality. No one ever told us that we were allowed to take 12 hours. I think it's become, to some degree, a learned helplessness with the idea that many of our students in academic remedial need can only take 12 hours, so we have to make sure that they get the kind of support they need to be successful. I think we need a little more evidence to find out if that is actually true, or whether or not it's a way that we've come up with a stereotype of this population group that they can't perform based on a variety of items. As a matter of fact, I would argue that many of these students have had some interesting life experiences that would have allowed them to know how to maneuver many contextual elements of their life, and they probably can not only handle the 12 hours, 15 hours, they could probably do a variety of other things. But obviously they need support, and we know this already, and you know it already, that if you ever really want to close these sorts of gaps, there's several items you have to focus on. One will be high expectations. The other will be having high rigor in the process. People will live up to expectations, they'll live up to the rigor, but you can't do that very well without high input. Support is also a main piece of this conversation. It's more than just having expectation and rigor. It's been able to kind of intervene with the students at their formative level to help them to be successful. You know this too, when we look at students who fail academically in college, the only one thing that has been shown to have in common is that they all studied alone. So the idea that we could figure out some way, either in a cohort model or in some way to help these students learn from each other as well as learn from the professionals in the room, has to be a part of this conversation. I would venture to argue that more than anything else, that our goal at the council with their strategic agenda and your goal on your campus with your strategic plans are to make sure that more of our students complete, but we want to do even more than that. We want to make sure that they complete with knowledge. The simple question I ask all my students when they first walk into my classroom when I teach is one by which that I think we need to also think about when we're giving out knowledge as professionals. And I ask the simple question, how many are here to get knowledge? Every single student will raise their hand. Every single student. And I said, great, because you've raised your hand, you're going to get an A in my class. You answered the question correctly. And they'll think about it for a second and look at me like I'm a little weird. And I said, okay. Then at the end of the class, some of you heard me tell this story before, but I think you know where I'm going with this. At the end of class, before they leave, I ask them, how many are going to come back to class? They look at me. They said, didn't you tell me, Thompson, that you're going to give me an A whether I come back to class or not? And I say, yeah, that's what I told you. And then they look, and I said, well, how many of you are coming back to class? And about 4 or 5 will raise their hands, and those are the ones that know that I had lied to them at that point. But the idea that we've replaced the idea of grades with knowledge. So what we're talking about here isn't just the measurement of whether or not they get good grades or passing grades. We want to be able to measure competencies. We want to make sure that they have the kind of input and the kind of knowledge that takes them to the other courses. But we also want to make sure they have the kind of input and kind of knowledge in these baseline foundational opportunities that they'll have a gaining of a lifelong process that they can use, obviously, outside when they get out of school, let's say. So what we're asking you folk to do in Kentucky is more than just come up with new ways of doing developmental education. We're asking you to use your brain power and your commitment that you've had so many years in doing this to help us to figure out how these foundational elements become even more complete throughout their entire college. Once again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Sue Kane, who we've been together for a lot of years, decades now, Sue. I don't look like it, by the way, as you can tell. Sue, those who know her know that I call her Bulldog, and that's a term of endearment. Sue never lets anything go. Thank goodness she doesn't let this go. I appreciate you, Sue, and I appreciate all of you who are here today. Thank you very much.